It is 7:07 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. First item on the agenda after call to order is attendance.
And did you say 7:07 Eastern?
Yes.
Let me just get that noted. So, Ms. McCardle?
Present.
Mr. Watkins?
Here.
Mr. Hagopian?
Here.
I am present, going to be at large. Mr. Blankenship? Do you know if he's coming, Madam Chair?
He will be late.
Okay.
And so will Mr. Heyman, and I'm sorry on his behalf, he's going to have to register.
Oh, okay. If I feel like it. Okay, so Mr. Maligan?
Present.
Mr. Nikela? Mr. Nikela?
Use that passport to go to Europe.
Sorry, I'm here.
Okay, and I heard you say Mr. Rufo would be late. I haven't seen him yet. Ms. Yanuskavich?
Here.
Mr. Benner, is he coming?
Unknown.
I just saw we just let in Mr. Dassing. Mr. Ford. I see you, but you are on mute. That's okay. Mr. Heyman is not here yet. Ms. Hayes.
Here.
Mr. Nana. Okay, I don't see Mr. Nana. Mr. Tunyevich.
Present in the moment, Madam Secretary.
Ms. Vest.
Here.
Going on to the alternates, Mr. Alvstad.
Here.
Mr. Cowan.
Martin Cowan is present.
Mr. Dar.
Here.
I do not see Mr. Hall. Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
Mr. Hyman.
Present.
Mr. Redpath.
Yes.
And I do note as the special invited guests, Rudy Cohn, Elizabeth Hunts, and Andrew Jacobs. So we are missing, Madam Chair, at large, Mr. Blankenship and Mr. Rufo. Regional representatives, Mr. Heyman and Mr. Benner. However, we do have Mr. Cowan to represent in Mr. Benner's region, and we have Mr. Hirsch to represent in Mr. Nano's region. All of the alternates are here except for Mr. Hall of Region 8.
Okay, Mr. Heyman is registered, so he needs an invitation.
Okay, let me go take care of that.
Classic Region 1.
He's busy doing party stuff. He's doing research for us right now.
I don't think he registered because he's not on the list.
He said registered.
He probably registered before. Let me look through the list and resend an invitation to him if you give me just
Well, I just texted him the link. He asked if I could send him the link since he's not at home. And I did right away.
Yeah, he got it a couple weeks ago, registered probably and forgot. So
Okay.
let me look through the list of old registrations and resend it to him.
Got it.
Yes, he registered on January 18th.
There you go.
So let me resend confirmation email. So he should have it again in his box.
Okay. All right. Moving right along. Our next item on the agenda is opportunity for public comment, 2 minutes each. So here's how we do that. You go down to the bottom of your screen and you click raise hand, or it might be reactions and then raise hand, depending on if you haven't done Zoom updates in a long time. Raise hand, and we will call on members of the public first, and then we will go to LNC members. Going once.
Mr. Jacobs has his hand raised if you want to see it.
Once, going twice. All right. Mr. Jacobs, please let us know what state you're from, and then go right ahead.
I'm residing in Pennsylvania. I wanted to speak in support of the proposed policy change. You can hear me, I take it?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Basically, this would be the proposed policy change dealing with the special meeting during a convention. This would in fact be a limitation on the power of the LNC, at least a de facto limitation. Currently, you could set an adjourned meeting at the call of the chair or at the call of two officers at the adjournment of your LNC meeting immediately before the board and call it back into session without any additional notice. So, and if I can just pick on him and use him as an example, if for some reason you wouldn't want to include Mr. Malagon in that conversation, you just wouldn't get around to telling him. I think he's familiar with this I think he's familiar with this process from California as well, about what an adjourned meeting would be. This will not replace it, but it will make it much less likely. It will not prohibit you from still doing something like that, but doing a special meeting will make it much less likely. There are several reasons to do this. One of them, which I actually mentioned in an article that I wrote dealing with adjourned meetings, would be a lawsuit. And no, I did not coordinate this with Mr. Sarwark, even though that has come up. There could be something there that you would have to deal with relating to some suit, for example, since you are in litigation or something that is coming up. You could also have a situation where you would have a vacancy on the credentials committee that only the LNC could fill. We actually was talking about this with a few people, and one of them brought out that this past year, Major League Baseball was having a meeting, and suddenly sickness got around and they had to end up canceling the meeting. Obviously, nobody wants to have delegates or members of the credentials committee get sick, but it is a possibility that it could happen. So doing this would help prevent something like this.
Thank you.
I would encourage you to adopt it.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Okay, up next we have Mr. Malaga.
I'll let Mr. Tunevich go first, if that's all right, Madam Chair.
His hand is down.
Oh, I will go ahead then. So I am speaking now in my capacity as chair of the Libertarian Party of California, and I'd like to address recent concerns raised about our upcoming 2024 Libertarian Party of California annual convention and the inclusion of certain candidates in our POTUS panel events. Every candidate seeking the Libertarian Party presidential nomination had the opportunity to be included in either of California's showcase events, which were never intended to be open LP candidate debates. Every candidate seeking the Libertarian Party presidential nomination still has the opportunity to participate in Sunday's showcase event before it's closed off. In order to have the chance to reach our large pool of Libertarian voters and to support the work that we do here in California, there was an included fee to participate as an LP presidential candidate. Several candidates took advantage of that opportunity, including Mr. Mike Termott, Dr. Michael Rechtenwald, Mr. Jacob Hornberger, Dr. Charles Bally, and as of this morning, Mr. Lars Mapstead. We do not charge invited guest speakers to attend our conventions. The massive benefit in convention attendance, enthusiasm, novelty, and media coverage that RFK Jr., Dr. Cornel West, and Dr. Jill Stein bring benefits all of our Libertarian candidates. That includes those taking part in the POTUS panel events and those simply attending to network, who will find a far more robust turnout than if this were a typical insular event. We look forward to seeing everyone at the LPCA annual convention. On that note, I will remind everyone that it is taking place February 23rd through February 25th so this month, at the Hilton Costa Mesa, 3050 Bristol Street, Costa Mesa, California, 92626. Our room block is sold out, but there is a Crown Plaza hotel that's about less than a 10-minute walk from the venue itself, and I believe that there are rooms available there. Any purchase that includes food must be purchased by Monday, February 12th. There's currently a flash sale going on for our formal gala that takes place that Saturday, so that's the 24th, and that flash sale ends on Friday, February 9th. Tickets have been cut from $150 to $125. Notable speakers and guests currently include Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Dr. Cornel West, Dr. Jill Stein, Dr. David Friedman, LNC Chair Angela McArdle, Dan McKnight, Chris Rufer, Michael Bolden, Larry Sharp, Brian McWilliams, Adam Nutter, Christina Tobin, Dr. Michael Rechtenwald, Mike Termott, Jacob Hornberger, Dr. Charles Valley, and Lars Mapstead. Our showcase events are Saturday evening, the Saturday Evening POTUS panel, which includes Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Dr. Jill Stein, Dr. Michael Rechtenwald, and Mr. Mike Chermott. Our Sunday evening POTUS panel now includes Dr. Cornell West, Mr. Jacob Hornberger, Dr. Charles Valley, and Mr. Lars Mapstead. And thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malgon. Mr. Tunjevich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Tunjevich from South Dakota, speaking in my individual capacity. Colleagues, some time ago, you'll recall we changed the way we handled notice for confidential discussions. By way of background, just expressing my own opinion, I think we were having a lot of off the public list deliberation, discussion, and we decided, all right, well, we needed to do something in the way of further disclosure. I think members of this body acknowledged that. I know I did. Now that we've had several months to kind of live with the policy we passed, I just wanted to say that in my view, and I think the view of others, I don't think it's really serving us well. The primary shortfall, in my opinion, is that all we are really noting is, okay, a new item is added to the spreadsheet. We may indicate the nature of the protected item, but that's it. I don't think last time I checked, we're not saying who initiated the topic, if the topic was ever resolved, without getting into details that would spoil the nature of the confidentiality required. So I'm bringing this up today just to kind of give early notice that I plan to collaborate with my fellow LNC members and others to hopefully come up with a better policy that we might consider at our March meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tunjevich. Okay, our next agenda item is
Madam Chair. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. Yes, go right ahead, Madam Secretary.
Oh, thank you. I am not speaking in my individual capacity. I am speaking in my capacity as an LNC member. Our Region 6 representative is incorrect. I am the one who provides the notice. I know who started the discussion, and I know any non-LNC members that were invited to the discussion. There's no resolution unless there's a vote. Votes cannot be in secret. All votes are in public. This is far more notice than has ever been given since I've been on the LNC in 2016. However, I look forward to seeing any additional policy that may be proposed. Just wanted to correct the, I'm sure, honestly mistaken factual information that was just given. And I do hope it is given to the Policy Manual Committee for wordsmithing, though that is absolutely not required. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I'll give one public comment for everyone. There's been a lot of speculation that I'm engaging in a secret backdoor deal to somehow crown Robert Kennedy Jr. our presidential nominee. I just want you all to know that's not the plan. The plan is to get Biden elected. The DNC is going to kick him off, and then he'll become our nominee. And I know he sucks, but he said we're going to get legal weed. So please suck it up and take one for the team. I'm with him, and we need to be with him because he has no idea where he's going.
Build back better. Better. Sorry.
All right. Our next agenda item is Convention Oversight Committee update by Mr. Malgon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be a brief update. So as you all know, Jennifer Halbane from Texas is our newest COC member. Thanks to everyone who voted for her. We are now meeting on a weekly basis, so every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We're at over $110,000 in revenue. As of this past Monday, we are at over 42% of our room blocks sold. I do suspect it's probably closer to 45 or 50 now. I haven't logged in since Monday. I haven't had the chance to. Most of our shoulder dates, it appears, are already at capacity. So I had a few people email me or call a little upset that they couldn't get the shoulder dates anymore. Those were limited. I'm going to try to do what I can, and I'll work on reallocating some nights from the main days to some of the shoulder dates that people seem to prefer to extend their stay in DC. So more updates on that. Vendor tables and premium rooms and suites are available online and are going quickly. So I would suggest that if you are on the fence about that you pull the trigger and reserve those vendor tables, rooms, and suites now. As a reminder, breakout rooms are also available for any sort of caucus functions, any sort of presidential campaign functions, anything of that sort. Our AV contractor is Jerry Hafner, as I believe I updated last time, and he is already doing a fantastic job. He was able to save us about $45,000 in venue expenses with some very creative maneuvering. Jim Tourney, who a lot of you know, is our convention photographer and is giving us a great price, and we're very excited to have his services. We're also currently exploring live entertainment options for the gala. More speakers should be announced soon, hopefully one this week. So be on the lookout for those promos, and we'll be trying to churn them out once every week or once every 2 weeks. We're going to try to get those out as soon as possible. We're just finishing up some logistical stuff, and we should have a section up on the website soon as well for promotion's sake. I'm also working with staff to figure out, for those of you that don't know, I attend the Friday staff meetings pretty regularly as my schedule allows, but I have been working with them to try to figure out the registration logistics and figure out what kind of vendors and costs for supplies and other necessities I'll be needing them for. And we are also close to securing a registration coordinator who will work with staff and head our registration efforts for the 2024 National Convention. Last and not least, we have received a number of volunteers. Thanks to all of you who have done that, but we can always use more. So please do fill out the survey that went out. We'll probably have it go out in a couple of more emails. Or if you have any sort of questions or want to see what's available, do contact our volunteer coordinator, Miss Meredith Hayes, at meredith.hayes@lp.org. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Let's see here. All right. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Malagon?
Yes, when is the California convention?
The 23rd through the 25th of this month, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you so much for asking. I will always answer a question. I love to answer questions, especially concerning California conventions.
I will also say that staff is working to get the rest of our speaker announcements out this month. So that should be exciting. Okay, our next agenda item is Ballot Access Committee update with Mr. Nana.
Mr. Nana is not present at the meeting at the moment.
Okay, Mr. Redpath, do you have anything that you'd like to share on behalf? I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just wanted to give you an opportunity.
Yes, I mean, we have 2 ongoing drives. North Dakota is very close to being completed. We need 7,000 valid signatures. We are ballpark, if Andy Jacobs is on, he could fine tune this number. We're ballpark 7,000 gross signatures, but that's pretty good given that North Dakota does not have, is the only state that does not have voter registration.
Right.
So we're shooting for 8,000 gross signatures. So it appears that we're 7/8 done, perhaps a little bit more. Mr. Jacobs has requested a enhanced compensation package. Perhaps that will come up during the executive committee meeting. Slightly enhanced compensation package is my understanding. I've made a recommendation on the ballot access list on that. So that's close to being done. And Ohio right now is also in pretty good shape. 5,000 valid signatures needed. Last number is ballpark 6,000 gross. They're probably shooting for about 8,000 gross, which would mean 5/8 validity. I think that the Ohio drive is not that far from being completed. And then there will be consideration of funds in the executive committee meeting to start the Kentucky drive, possibly start the New Mexico drive, and possibly also consideration of a somewhat enhanced compensation or a bonus for Mr. Jacobs due to his, I think, outstanding work in North Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Redpath. Mr. Ford, do you have a question?
No, just a update on Rhode Island. The happy to announce that close on the heels of the success in Maine, legislation has been submitted in the state of Rhode Island, which would drastically alter ballot access requirements from a most. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, currently we're at 5% of either presidential and or gubernatorial. They alternate. So you've effectively only got a 4-year window if you can make those heinous numbers. With the blessing of the Secretary of State, our legislation would reduce that to 2% of any statewide office and or 5,000 registered libertarians with a proviso for if there's an existing libertarian elected state representative or senator, that we'd be able to maintain ballot access even if we didn't meet the 2% bogey. I'd hope to have a bill number tonight. It's been submitted. It's in the hands of the lawyers now for about 2 weeks or so. I'd like to thank Mr. Redpath for his assistance in providing a lot of critical documentation for other states, which were very important in our meeting with the Secretary of State. Harrison, Kemp, Bill Hunt, and myself met with our Secretary of State and their head of their elections, and they were kind enough to actually tighten up a little bit of the language. And like I said, we currently await. We're actively lobbying on this a couple nights a week in the State House. This is the first year of the bill. We all wish upon a star that it'll get through. So far, it's met overwhelmingly with approval by both Republicans and Democrats. But anyone who's dealt with state legislation know that the sausage is often the sausage making can be interesting. So it's the beginning of a process, but we're having a lot more success with the lobbying function as a team for people across the region and Mr. Redpath than we've ever had so far in actually trying to get their ridiculous standards electorally. So that's what's happening in Rhode Island. And again, thank you, Mr. Redpath, for your help.
You're welcome. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Ms. Vest?
I want to thank Mr. Redpath and Richard Winger for getting in touch with me, and for you for referring to Madam Chair. We're facing some unprecedented ballot access challenges in Louisiana from some new legislation. And I just want to let everybody know that was happening. Anybody that hasn't heard of that, they converted some offices, our federal candidates, and I'm not sure what, there's a list of offices that you now have to get signatures for and find ways to qualify to put your candidates on the ballot. And they basically left us with they left all third parties with no method to remedy that the way the legislation is written. So just a heads up for everybody, ballot access in the committee. We normally have not had any issues getting our, you can just pay a fee here and get on the ballot, and that's not going to be the case going forward for some of these offices. So I just wanted to thank Mr. Redpath and Richard Winger and you for getting in touch with me about that, and let everybody know that's a serious situation here in Louisiana for ballot access. We're lobbying about it. So
absolutely. If you don't mind, if someone could send in just a little bit more information on maybe who we could contact regarding lobbying to help us, that would be great.
We're working on a plan, so I'll have more information. Rufus Craig is going to help with that. And
great, because we can get people calling in and emailing representatives from across the country. A lot of people have done that for Tennessee's Defend the Guard bill. We should be doing it for ballot access.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I will also say, before we jump back to Mr. Redpath, that Virginia has a bill in committee right now to change petitioning to electronic signature gathering for ballot access. That would be really helpful. And I've spoken with Jennifer Leatherbury, the Virginia chair, about it. I'd really like to have them get some support from people across the country, doing some calls, emails, so on and so forth, to the representatives who sit on that committee. So I'm going to have staff send out an email about it sometime this week. And just please keep that on your radar. We need to be phone banking for this stuff. That's like one of the least time-consuming ways we can do it. Mr. Redpath. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me jump to Madam Secretary because she had her hand up. I'm so sorry. And then I'll jump back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First was housekeeping. I wanted to make sure everyone could see The live notes, I was having some sharing problems. You could just indicate in chat if there's any issues. There's also a link to it. To piggyback somewhat slightly on what Miss Best said, first of all, in Colorado, the enemies of ballot access are hard at work. We also have news in Colorado that I keep forgetting his name, but Mr. Redpath will remember. It's a very wealthy gentleman who goes around the country trying to institute jungle primaries. They figured out Colorado is a huge hotbed for RCV, a lot of support for RCV in Colorado. So they piggybacked jungle primaries with RCV, which is just a complete poison pill. They asked me, the RCV Colorado asked me to be sometimes they just need a named petitioner. I didn't do any of the work, they did, but I was the named petitioner, and getting it separated under Colorado's only one topic per bill type thing. So we're having a rehearing on that as to whether jungle primaries are indeed a separate topic from RCV. I think they completely are. And yes, also I heard about Louisiana. Mr. Winger gave me a call immediately when that happened. And I also gave him the email address of the state chair. So I do hope he got in touch with her as well as Ms. Vest. But thank you. Both Louisiana and Colorado are in a battle now.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Redpath.
I just wanted to say, with respect to Louisiana, I would think that would be ripe for litigation if we don't make any progress on the lobbying front. This very well could be just an oversight by the legislature that nobody really realized was happening. So I think we ought to go the lobbying front. Hey, you created a problem here they may not be cognizant of. If that doesn't work, I think it's ripe for litigation.
Thank you, Mr. Redpath. All right. Let's jump to our next agenda item, which is policy manual amendments. Agenda is by Madam Secretary.
Okay, this did not come up in a policy manual committee, so it will require a second, as it didn't come out of committee. So I'll read the motion and then speak to it if there's a second. It's to amend policy manual section 1.02 to add a new section 9 entitled Emergency Meetings During a National Convention. It would read, if an emergency matter arises during a national convention, the LNC may meet immediately upon either the call of the chair or any two officers. The meeting may be held in a hybrid electronic / in-person format, only if that is necessary to achieve quorum. Otherwise, it will be held solely in person. An announcement of such a meeting shall be made on the LNC business list and to the convention delegates if possible. At least 15 minutes must elapse between the notification and the meeting. I'll wait to see if there's a second before I speak to it.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. First, I'll reiterate everything Mr. Jacobs said earlier, but I'd like to add some things that I'd seen in comments beforehand. First of all, the LNC does not dissolve at the beginning of a convention. It is not correct that the officers only exist to have a legal entity. The LNC is in office until adjournment sine die. That's not particularly relevant. It was just some incorrect information that I wished to correct. I don't anticipate this ever happening, but it does in fact limit the power of the LNC. I forgot a sentence in the motion that I didn't type here that I will do it as an amendment after I speak to it. There's supposed to be a sentence at the end there, my omissions. All such meetings shall be considered special meetings. That's a sentence to add. The reason I wanted to add that, special meetings can only discuss what is noticed. Right now, any LNC at our pre-convention meeting can just declare an adjourned meeting upon call of the chair, which means, again, we can exclude anybody as long as we have quorum. And that's a regular meeting. The difference between a regular meeting and a special meeting is that a regular meeting, you can discuss anything you want. At a special meeting, it's only the items that are specifically noticed. What was this for? This was for emergencies, as it says. A credentials committee member resigns and the credentials committee says, we need somebody else who has authority. Or the hotel says, we got a bomb threat and you guys can't continue your meeting. The LNC can meet and go, how are we going to handle this? Are we going to call an adjourned meeting? Can we meet in the parking lot? What business has to be done? There are 1,000,001 situations that could happen that require an LNC decision so that we do not risk not having either valid LNC elections or valid presidential nominations. As we become bigger, we will be the topic of lawsuits from the duopoly. That was entirely the intention of this, though I have enjoyed the fanfic. Let me tell you what we cannot do. We cannot decide any issues as to whether or not a delegation will be seated. We cannot decredential anyone, though I am flattered that people think I have that power. Only the credentials committee can do that, and this has nothing to do with this. But there are circumstances in which the LNC could have to make an emergency decision. This gives a notice requirement, says where notice has to be held, and limits it specifically to the item in the notice, which must be of an emergency matter. But let me give you another thing that it does. It gives the delegates notice so that if the LNC for some reason decides to decide something that is blatantly against our bylaws, they can appeal immediately to the JC at the actual convention itself, where the JC is prepared to meet already for certain items that can be appealed during a convention, such as a platform plank that goes against the statement of principles or a resolution that goes against the statement of principles. This does not give the LNC power that we already do not have. It, in fact, limits it. If it doesn't pass, because I'm concerned about emergency things, I would recommend every LNC from this point forward, from the moment of our before convention meeting, to just declare an adjourned meeting so that we do not risk not having a presidential candidate or any other important business because of some dumbass phoning in some kind of threat or something to the facility where they tend to throw us out. I would encourage everyone that when I'm going to make a little bit of an editorial statement with the ideas that there's some kind of like secret conspiracy to policy manual amendments. Let me tell you, conspiracy is just half of it. Secret's the other half. And giving 2.5 weeks notice of my secret conspiracy makes me a terrible secret conspirator. And if I was ever going to hatch a secret conspiracy, I certainly wouldn't give 2.5 week notice of it. This is to protect the party, and I highly recommend its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Malagon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for the Secretary on this proposed motion. You may not be able to decredential anybody, but would this give me the power to decredential anyone I want? And would this allow us to solidify Biden's LP presidential nomination?
It will give me the power to shackle you to your chair if you get too out of hand at this convention, only if I deem it an emergency.
I'm in favor of this then. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Malagon.
Deported.
I believe up next is Mr. Tunevich and then our secretary.
I think the secretary was first, Madam Chair.
Okay, go right ahead, Madam Secretary.
I'd like to move that amendment that I neglected to put in there that adds the extra protection, and I'll type it on the screen. Is hold on one moment. I need to actually get to these screens. These, I'm sorry, it's not in blue. I'll make it in blue. Shall be considered special meetings. That is important language. So I am moving that amendment, which was intended to be in there from the beginning.
I believe that needs a second.
It would.
Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary's amendment has been moved and seconded. These meetings shall be considered special meetings. That's it, right? That's the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. I believe now we'll go to Mr. Tunevich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I can just ask the Secretary a question. It's not on the amendment, it's on the overall motion, if that's all right. So the question is, who decides what is an emergency for the purposes of this proposal? And my experience has been when the convention is in session, you know, the LNC meets prior to the convention starting and right after it finishes, and that the convention sort of rules in between. And at this point, I am disregarding whatever parliamentary interpretations may exist. My principal question is, who decides what's an emergency? Thank you.
Madam Chair, I do not wish to address that question until we dispose of the amendment.
Yeah, I think that that's fair. And I think Mr. Tunevich's question was, you know, fine. But
Yeah,
let's
no,
just go ahead.
I'm good. Let's go with the amendment and then we can ask the question.
Okay. Any objection to the amendment? Any further discussion on it? No objection. Oh, Mr. Tunevich?
Nope, I'm not objecting to the amendment. I'm just waiting to discuss my question.
Okay,
Thank you.
got it. Okay, if there's no objection, the amendment passes, and now we're going to go back to discussion on the main motion as amended, and we're going to jump to Mr. Tunevich.
Thanks again. I won't repeat myself other than to repeat the question. Who decides what's an emergency? And, you know, under what standard of definition, that sort of thing. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary.
I would leave interpretation of our policy manual to the chair who makes such rulings. I believe this is a parliamentary inquiry that I do not have the authority to answer. I can tell you my intention, and that's all I can tell you. My intention is that I think a reasonable person knows what an emergency is. There's very limited things that the LNC can do anyway. So even if it were something that wasn't an emergency, that LNC is out of office. A new LNC is formed, even if it's all the same people, upon adjournment sine die. And if that post-LNC meeting doesn't like some decision that wasn't an emergency that has some effect after the convention, they can always rescind it. So I don't see it as an issue since the power is very limited. But I would also defer to the chair here, but I would say that I think the statement that keeps being said that the convention runs the party for the 3 days of convention is not what the bylaws say. The bylaws grant certain powers to the delegates, most certainly quite powerful powers. But one of those powers is not plenary control of the party. That resides with the LNC from the moment of their election, which is adjournment sine die of the last regular convention, to adjournment sine die of the next regular convention. Let me give you another example, Mr. Tunevich. Say, for some reason, we got somebody we hired, I'm not going to give any kind of example, but say somebody we hired decided all of a sudden they had us under the gun. They're going to claim there's an ambiguity in our contract, and they're going to leave with all of their equipment unless we agree to an additional $3,000. Well, the LNC has to make that decision, or we risk maybe losing a critical vendor. That would be something else. Those are the types of things that I think a reasonable person would think is an emergency, being things that must be decided so that the convention can finish. That would be my interpretation. The chair may have a different one.
If I may follow up,
Sorry.
Madam Chair.
Well, I'd like to share.
Expired.
Thank you. Does anybody want to move to extend time on this?
I'll move to extend for 10 minutes.
I would second that because the time is for 2 amendments and there's another one coming up.
Okay. Any objections to extending time by 10 minutes? Okay, hearing no objection, time is extended. Let me give my brief interpretation of this, since I'm the one who would have to make the call for me to consider this. it would have to be something where I announced it and people didn't riot and want to throw chairs at me. It would have to be pretty serious. I can't think of any realistic thing where this is going to happen that I, would prefer not to plant in the minds of the people who, don't want us to succeed. But this is, that's how I would have to do a very good job of reading the room in order to do this, or it would have to be quite apparent. Obviously if a tornado comes through and rips the roof off of the building, then we're going to have to figure it out. But that's really about it for me. Let's jump back to Mr. Tunevich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for some clarity on your comments. So when you say you'd have to read the room, you're referring to the convention as a whole at that time?
The body, yeah.
Yeah,
The people
the body
before
as a
me
whole.
who are
Right.
sitting down there on chairs that they could throw at me.
No one would throw chairs at you. But so you would inform the body of the need, perhaps the nature of the emergency, et cetera, prior to holding such a emergency meeting? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if it's possible, yeah. If there's people standing there in front of me.
Well, we would certainly clear the mics, Madam Chair, but all I'm getting at is notification of the convention first prior to calling such an emergency meeting. I think is a great idea, provides more disclosure, and is an easy thing to do during convention. And I wonder if the Secretary would consider that sort of a friendly bit of an amendment to what she's suggesting.
Madam Chair, may I answer?
Certainly.
First of all, I know Mr. Tunevich does not like parliamentary wranglings, but there's no such thing as a friendly amendment. However, I would note that it already says that an announcement of such meeting shall be made on the LNC business list and to the convention delegates if possible. And the only reason if possible was in there is say for, and when I say convention delegates, it means everyone in the room, not necessarily the two people. And only reason I put if possible in there is like if the power went out, it's not possible. But the chair or the two officers calling the meeting would be in breach. It would be an invalid meeting if it was possible to do that and they failed to do so. Making it a special meeting kind of solidifies that even further. So the intention is that an email immediately go out so LNC members know they need to keep their phones with them. And also all of the convention delegates would know, and the meeting would include the place. So like, hey, we're meeting to consider appointment of a new credentials committee member in the, I don't know the names of the rooms, in the Westwood room or whatever it might be. But yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move an amendment of deleting the words "if possible" from the proposed from the proposed change.
Okay, with our second amendment in. It needs a second.
I would second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Mr. Benner. Any discussion on the amendment?
I'll speak to it. I think notification of the convention of any such emergency is important. I think it's easy to do. And, we, in general, have large groups of people in the room. I think a notification at the mic is a minimal requirement, a low bar to reach. And I think it should be part of this proposal if we're going to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Tunevich.
I can't find my raised hand, Madam Chair.
Oh, Madam Secretary.
Okay, thank you. If there's an emergency, we're not talking about average situations, which are easy. Anyone can subscribe to the LNC list. Any convention member that is concerned that the LNC may call a meeting they don't hear about, if they're subscribed to the LNC business list, they will get an email just like anybody else. So there are two modes of notice here. I cannot envision a scenario absent a nuclear war, in which case I don't think we'll be too worried, or our entire public grid going down. In such a case, I don't think we'll be so worried about our convention. So an announcement of the meeting shall be made on the LNC business list to which anybody can subscribe and to the convention delegates if possible. So I absolutely oppose this because if there is an emergency, it may be impossible to do one or the other of those. However, I can't envision a scenario in which we'd still care about our convention, in which it would be impossible to do both. Do not want to tie our hands. I'd rather have this not passed at all and just have an adjourned meeting in which we can do anything we want at all with no notice to anybody if we're going to tie our hands in this matter. This language makes it as broad as possible to have a valid meeting and still serve its purpose.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, just to a final comment, and that would be, I've already explained the reasons why I think deleting this provision is important. Notice to the delegates. I hear what the secretary is saying, of course. Hey, what if something comes up that we can't? The reason for this notification being important now is because we don't have a good fixed definition of what constitutes an emergency. And that can get very squishy, very subject to interpretation. Through the power of notifying the delegates, we get past that, because whatever the situation is, they'll all know, and then we'll move on to our emergency meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Tunievich. Mr. Malagon?
I just wanted to call the question, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Malagon. Is there any objection to calling the question? Okay, if there's no further discussion, let's go ahead and go to a vote. Madam Secretary, thank you so much.
Okay, this vote is on calling the question, Madam Chair?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. There was no objection.
There was no objection.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
this would be let me just, for my own notes, policy manual amendment, emergency meeting. So when I'm looking back at my notes, I know what this ballot is for.
This is on the proposed amendment, right?
On the proposed amendment to the policy manual.
We are going, yes.
The one I made.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
We are going, it's the second amendment. The first one was adopted. So we're on the final amendment. It's an up, down, yes, no vote on this one.
Deleting if possible.
Yes.
So a yes vote would delete it, a no vote would not delete it. Gotcha. Thank you. Mr. Benner.
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship.
Pass.
Mr. Blankenship is here. I need to note you. Mr. Dassing.
It's been all day.
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Pass.
Mr. Hagopian.
Yes.
Mr. Heyman.
Yes.
I will vote no. Ms. Hayes.
Pass.
Mr. Malagon.
Nay.
Mr. Hirsch.
Yes.
Mr. Nikela.
I'll vote aye.
Mr. Rufo did not show yet, did he? Mr. Tunievich.
Aye.
Ms. Best. Ms. Best.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Watkins.
No.
Ms. Yanuskavich.
No.
Oh, sorry. Right here. Then going to the passes. Mr. Blankenship.
Abstain.
Mr. Ford.
I'm going to abstain. I apologize, Madam Secretary. I've been having technical problems for the last 20 minutes. I've been going in and out of the room, so I'll abstain.
Miss Hayes.
No.
And there's no Mr. Rufo. So it's 8 yes. And Madam Chair, I normally don't ask for your vote unless it's to cause or break a tie, but would you like to vote?
What's the threshold?
Majority. So your vote will not make a difference.
Okay, then chair's not voting.
So it is 8 yes, 5 no. And for some reason, the abstentions were not populating, but there's 3 abstentions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Okay, if there's no objection, we're going to go to a vote on the main motion as amended.
Let me just get that right there. One moment, let me duplicate the template. Clear the votes. And now it's the main thing. Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Dessing,
Yes.
Mr. Ford, I'll come back. I'm assuming he's going to be an abstention because of his issues. Mr.
I'm going to
Hagopian.
abstain. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Mr. Hagopian said yes. Mr. Heyman.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Ms. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Malagan.
Abstain.
Mr. Hirsch.
Yes.
Mr. Nikela.
I apologize. I vote aye.
We don't have Mr. Rufo. Mr. Tunyevich.
Aye.
Ms. Best.
I'll vote no.
Mr. Watkins.
Abstain.
Ms. Yanuskavich.
Yes.
And I have to fix my formula because I do not know why. Madam Chair, your vote will not make a difference, but right now it is 11 yes, 1 no, 3 abstentions.
Thank you. Chair's not voting.
That will make it 4 abstentions. And I'll just auto-populate that and worry about fixing that formula later.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our next agenda item. It's financial goals check-in.
There was an additional policy manual
Oh.
amendment, Madam Chair.
So sorry. Go right ahead.
It's regarding the Convention Oversight Committee. This also did not come out of the Policy Manual Committee, but it was recommended by the Convention Oversight Committee Chair, but I think it would still need a second. I meant to strike this, but I only made it red. The items.
Did the audio drop for everybody else?
No.
No.
So it is, I'm sorry, I didn't put the strikeout in here. I will do that right now. So this is to amend the composition of the Convention Oversight Committee. I'll speak to it if we get a second. It is to just delete the sentence that says plus a minimum of 2 non-LNC members, and to clarify that the secretary is an ex officio non-voting member, if not otherwise a member of the committee. If there's a second, I'll speak to it.
I'll second it.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I've been on the LNC since 2016. This particular provision has been amended probably more times than any provision of the policy manual, if I remember correctly. And how many non-LNC members we need. Oh my God, someone who was one of our minimum 2 LNC members just got appointed as regional representative, and now we need to fiddle with these numbers. I don't think the number of non-LNC members is hugely important. We're not going to have 7 members of the LNC who want to be on the Convention Oversight Committee. I do think it's important to have a minimum number of LNC members because it's our biggest financial thing. But I think just setting the minimum number of LNC members is all we need to do. In my experience, we're going to be very fortunate to fill the 3, and then the rest are all going to be non-LNC members by default. And then there's just a weird quirk. What if the secretary is voted in as a full member of the Convention Oversight Committee? this clarifies then that they're no longer ex officio. So that's the purpose of the two changes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Tunyevich?
There's a request for information, Madam Chair. Does the chair also serve as an ex officio non-voting member of the COC?
The chair serves as an ex officio non-voting member of every committee except the ones that are bylaws mandated. So yes.
That was my recollection. Thank you.
All right. Any questions or further discussion? I will say that I hope we have less editing of all of the committee requirements in the future by making them better written and a little bit more fast and loose so more people can be eligible to be on committees. Okay, if there's no further discussion, let's go ahead and go to a vote.
One moment.
Yes, no problem.
I'm just going to copy the original template and see if that fixes mine. It didn't. Okay, so this is for COC. Let me just clear out these votes. Mr. Bowen, why did I say Bowen? I did the B and the C and
I thought we went back
them.
in time, yeah.
Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Dassing,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian,
Yes.
Mr. Heyman.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Maligan,
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Nakela,
I vote aye.
Mr. Tunyevich,
Aye.
Ms. Best,
Aye.
Mr. Watkins,
See.
Ms. Yanuskavich.
Yes.
Okay, Madam Chair, it's 15 yes, 0 no, 0 abstentions.
Okay, thank you. That motion passes. All right, now we'll jump to our next agenda item, which is financial goals check-in, agendized by me. In the month of January, we came a few $1,000s short of our goal, which is a bummer. And I don't have the exact dollar amount breakdowns. I apologize, I didn't get all of that together from staff yet. But January is typically kind of a tough month. There were a couple of things that went wrong. We had a technical problem with the newest piece of software that we purchased on the day that it was supposed to go out to give us a big boost, which is a huge bummer. And I think if that had worked, we would have passed our goal. So we're going to give that a try again this week after we've got it fixed. But if we had more Lnc members making renewal calls and doing donor outreach, I think it would probably help a lot. I'm doing quite a bit of it. We have staff and contractors doing it as well, but having people hear from our board members and having a little bit of help from the board, I think would be really great. So if you're able to help us make calls, I would appreciate it. If you're a little bit shy and nervous on the phone, the best thing to do is get over it and do it anyway. But if you can't do that, you can send emails and you can also do text messages. I think text messages is a really good middle ground there. Lots of people prefer text over phone calls anyway. I do a lot of donor thank you text messages when I have Arthur and I just have like one free hand, but I can't fully work. So just throwing that out there. We also want to encourage as many people as possible to purchase convention packages, to go, book space at the hotel. I know Mr. Malagon mentioned he's got to make sure that the additional dates, the bookend days, are expanded. But yeah, that helps a lot. It really helps when people see that the board is also really excited about everything cool that's been happening, and they want, and that we want everybody to donate and fundraise and support the awesome work that we're doing for our candidates. Short of that, my goal is to exceed the 125K non-convention revenue goal by the end of March. I would love to see us at 140. So that's still my target, and we will see what happens. Staff is working really hard. I appreciate it. And I think as we overcome the CRM hurdle and have a transition, and we'll talk about that on the next agenda item, you're going to see a lot more productivity out of them. And I don't mean that they're not working, but I mean that there's a lot of frustration work instead of productive work. And I think once we remove those frustration barriers, you're going to see fundraising revenue increase a bit. Mr. Tunyevich, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So specifically regarding fundraising and trying to achieve our goals in March, as you're well aware, our fundraising is a mix of sources. And I guess my question has to do with current efforts being made on the membership renewal front. As you know, our membership numbers have not been what we would like them to be. Historically, that has been kind of the foundation. That recurring renewal we can always count on, and when it's trending up, we trend up. Can you take a minute on what efforts are being made from a membership renewal standpoint, and do you think that'll improve in March as well? And if so, why? Thank you.
We are increasing the hours for one of our staff members to focus specifically on membership. And my goal is to have that happen by March 1st. So I think that you will see, I don't know what percentage yet because we have to map it out with her time and where she's going and what she's doing, but you will see some sort of increase in March. And we've also considered having a short meeting with a consultant or two, and we found a couple of affordable ones on specifically like new membership growth techniques. So yeah, we touched on that in a recent staff meeting this week.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very glad to hear that we definitely do have plans to address membership. I had another question that seems to have been raised somewhat on social media that I'm not sure that everyone is aware that you are our acting executive director, that we are not missing an executive director, that those duties are in fact being filled at a savings to the party. Might not
Huge
be ideal.
savings.
Yeah, might not be ideal for your personal life, but I can tell you that I certainly appreciate the savings to the party. I have another question for you. As we're going into election season, are there any further critical hires that we need to make? And if so, are there plans to do them? And how do you feel about our staffing at the moment?
Let me think about how to say this without divulging political strategy.
Yeah, I'm asking for generalities.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, generally, I think that after we expand the hours of 2 more of our employees right now, and Mr. Hagopian, we might need to move some things in the budget around. I met with Hannah Kennedy about this, but it would be, I can't think of the term right now. It's a budget neutral change, as in I'm not suggesting we increase or decrease our budget. I might shift some lines around. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But we will probably bring a contractor on as we get closer to I guess election hot season. And I'll share more a little bit about that behind the scenes, and then certainly share more about it publicly, once we execute it. Okay. That's all I have right now for financial goals check-in. I'd kind of like to jump right to CRM check-in because the two are a little bit related. So the Information Services Committee made a recommendation to jump to Zoho CRM. Good news is someone on our staff was already familiar with it and said that it was great. So that's good. The IS committee said that it was fantastic. My other staff members met with the Zoho team and a Zoho consultant and really loved everything that they read. Does it meet the marketing, email capabilities, data size needs of the LNC? Yes, it does. It completely meets it. It meets it at, I think, with a couple more licenses that we might actually need. I think our total monthly cost comes to a little over $1,300. It might be $1,350. And it has an API integration. We would be able to move affiliates with us if they so choose. Now, affiliates would need to pay for it, but the cost for affiliates, I believe it's $35 or $90 per license. It's basically comparable in cost to Nation Builder. So I've already spoken with a couple of state chairs about it, and they're interested in jumping with us. The timeline for this isn't 100%, but it's possible we could be completely finished moving over there by the end of March. Will our staff be doing all of the heavy lifting on the move? No. Our staff will not be doing that. The consultants will be doing it. Our staff will be lending a hand and guiding it. There's a whole bunch of technical complaints and grievances and things that they were very relieved, a lot of relief over it, those sort of details. But that's sort of the big picture narrative. I met with the consultant team as well, separately, just me and her, so that I could have some questions asked in a really frank manner. I felt really good about it. They had a 3-hour call earlier, I think at the beginning of this week, and I sat in on half of it. Mr. Watkins has sat in on part of it as well, just so that he could hear. I feel really good about it. What are we going to do with Civi CRM? We're going to continue to service it for the affiliates that want to stay on it. And my hope is that after we get all of our national data moved over and we're using Zoho, national staff isn't going to be stressed out and sweating trying to fix their own operations. They can focus a little bit more and take a little more care and time into fixing things for affiliates, because Zoho is it's like drag and drop. You don't have to edit it. You don't have to back end code everything. So yeah, really good news. People are wondering, can we afford it? One of the things that we did to make this affordable is that we decided to outsource our mailroom operations. And that has made it's perfectly within budget now. And we had a little bit left over to move around and give some other staff some additional hours so that we can do more on the fundraising level. So yeah, it is affordable. Seems like it's going to work really well. And we got good opinions from multiple people with different backgrounds, people with different, perspectives. All right, let me jump to questions. Mr. Malagon.
I'll let Mr. Tunievich go first, actually.
Okay, Mr. Tunievich.
And
Thank
Ms.
you.
Vest.
Mine's super quick. Just wanted to weigh in as an existing Zoho customer. Been with them for, it's got to be close to a decade, and and not at a level that like we're going to use, but have been very pleased. So a well-known name and a good value as well, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vest.
I had one of my chairs ask a question about Zoho, so I'm going to go ahead and ask that. We're not hosting that, correct? That's going to be an off-site hosted application. Correct. Okay, and also I've had the same chairs express concerns about moving the membership, doing so much data move right before convention. Is there anything in place to make sure that we don't hit any roadblocks or any bumps?
Yes, the Civi CRM will continue to remain 100% online. So we won't lose. Let's say that Zoho turns out to be an absolute disaster. What we do is we just go right back to the operation that we had. So there will not be, like, there will be zero lost data. I've made it like really clear to staff, and they said that, Angela, that there wouldn't be any way to do it anyway because we're going to keep it turned on for state affiliates. So for anybody concerned with potential data loss or disasters, CiviCRM will remain operational. So we will have an operational backup.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that was my biggest concerns from Region 7. And everybody knows I'm not a fan of Civi, so.
Sure, yeah, no problem, understandable, especially considering what happened with our last migration.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure thing. Okay, Mr. Malaga?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. I'm gonna go ahead and give information as though I was asking for a request for information. Remaining agenda items automatically get bumped to the next meeting. They don't disappear. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Any objection?
Right here, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, we've got an objection. Ms. Vest, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I object as well.
Okay. All right, we're going to need to go to a vote.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
it's not a privileged motion to adjourn, because just of the way our special rule of order is, so it is debatable.
Okay.
Just as a point of information.
Mr. Nikela?
What's remaining on the agenda tonight?
Mr. Tunjevich had questions about Rage Against the War Machine and California's fundraiser.
Roger.
No, my name is Adrian.
Okay. Let me see. I think I had. Okay, Madam Secretary.
Well, I wanted to know if I would like to speak, but I'd like to know if Mr. Malagan would like to speak to his motion before I do. He has that privilege.
Oh, sure. I mean, we all know what this is going to be about, and this is just kind of a waste of time. We have an executive committee meeting after this, and I have 2 other meetings. I mean, some of us actually do stuff, so I don't want to waste my time or anybody else's time. So I'd rather just move on with our day.
Okay, Mr. Tunjevich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I asked about fundraising and expenses regarding our Black Tie California fundraiser that we had recently, because as a LNC member, I've not received much in the way of details on how that fundraiser went. I had detailed a few potential questions for discussion in I did receive, thanks to the treasurer, some information about the expenses, but suspiciously nothing about the revenue. So I'm just,
Suspiciously?
Well, by that I mean, if it didn't go well, we should at least know about it, talk about it, etc. Right? And I suspect if it did go well, we would be trumpeting it through the heavens. The same is true for questions about the Rage Against the War Machine rally and the finances associated with it. I was going to inquire about things like, was the chair and the chair of that other party kind of were the co-creators of that organization that put on the rally. Well, I know there were expenses associated with it. I don't know if it's true or not. And that's why I'm asking the chair. She'd be in a position to know, was there a lot of money spent? If so, on what and on whom? So those were the reasons these were placed on the agenda. And I object to adjourning because I think they are worthwhile. If you as a committee member don't know more details about these 2 things that I'm talking about, I believe you deserve to, and that's why we should oppose adjourning at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Blankenship is next.
Yeah, I actually think Miss Vest actually raises a good point in the chat, which is I'm wondering if a good kind of middle ground here would be a kind of summary response to the things that can quickly be answered, and then a longer discussion in the group chat or public list, whatever we want to call it, for more information that way. To me, that makes more sense, and allows for a larger discussion without taking up more time when we have another meeting tonight. But I do think these are things that need to be discussed. I agree with Mr. Tunievich that they do need to be discussed. I'm just thinking maybe we can, for sake of time, and those of us on the East Coast, have our meeting, do a summary, and then go into the executive session. Thank you.
Mr. Hagopian?
Okay. I'll start with saying I don't think either of these things do need to be discussed. One has to do with another organization that's not us, and the other one has to do with a state fundraiser. That being said, I believe that this LNC needs to do much better at listening when minority discussions get put on the list. We are doing this way too often, where we're adjourning meetings instead of discussing things, where we're cutting off discussion on topics we don't like. If you've been on other boards, you know that that's not how this is supposed to work. So I'm going to vote no on adjourning this meeting, even though I believe that these discussions have no business at the LNC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hagopian. Madam Secretary?
Thank you. I made some of the reasons for why I don't believe these belonged on the agenda. One of them was raised before. Those sorts of details about an outside organization just aren't appropriate. That's not something we signed on as a sponsor. If somebody wants to inquire about investments we made, it also seemed to me there was some veiled accusations in the way that was worded that could be a complete misunderstanding on my part. So I don't think that topic is appropriate for the LNC. On the other item, I didn't see any requests for this information prior to this meeting. While I agree with Mr. Hagopian, and I'm going to disagree with, let me say the point I disagree with him on first, and then the point I agree with him. I don't think people are necessarily cutting off discussion on topics they quote unquote don't like. I think that is reading motive into people that is completely inappropriate. However, I do think there might be cutting off of discussions of things that they feel their time can be spent better on, and that is perfectly acceptable under Roberts, even if somebody doesn't agree with that a minority cannot hold hostage for discussion people who feel they have enough information. However, I agree with the comments on the list that this question should have been asked first on the list or privately to the chair to ask what should have been held list. This seems like an ambush discussion to me. Again, I realize perhaps that's out of bounds. So I'm gonna retract the word ambush. This was a discussion that was put on a public list to me for reasons that I do not know when it should have been held on the LNC list, and it was asking the chair, who has her schedule planned out for the next week on 5 days' notice, basically to spend hours of work. I think that is super, super inconsiderate, and we really need staff here as well to answer this question. And I wasn't about to ask staff to take a Sunday night from their family on 5 days' notice. The information that we're entitled to have, and Mr. Tunievich is completely entitled to have it, can be done on the list. There was no reason to keep all of us away from our families on a Sunday night in a room to do this. So I will be voting in favor of adjournment and encouraging the questions to be asked, whether privately to the chair, if they involve confidential things, or publicly on the list. I don't think there was any reason for this to be in a special meeting, taking away from the time of our families.
Point of personal privilege, Madam Chair, since I was mentioned in her comments.
Yes, and since you mentioned me in your comments.
Indeed.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, just briefly. I think that these items were raised as a discussion agenda item. I would have been perfectly satisfied if the chair had said to me, "Hey, Mark, we're busy this week in time for the meeting. How about it if I, respond to your questions separately on the list publicly," since the question was asked publicly, without taking any additional staff time between now and then. I would have been perfectly happy with this. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. There's more to say, but let's just get to the vote.
Mr. Watkins?
Call on the question.
You? Is there any objection to calling the question on the vote on adjournment? Going once, going twice. Okay, we're going to go to a vote on adjournment.
1 second, let me just catch up. Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Dassing,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Am I entitled to a brief comment to qualify my vote?
no.
I vote yes.
Mr. Hagopian,
Nope.
Mr. Heyman,
Yes.
I will vote yes. Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Maligan,
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Nikela,
I abstain.
Mr. Rupo. Oh, excuse me,
Not here.
he's not here. I keep wanting to be here so badly. One moment.
That makes one of us.
Mr. Chunyevich,
Nay.
Ms. Vest,
No.
Mr. Watkins, Mr. Watkins.
Yes. Can y'all not hear me?
I couldn't the first time, but I did then.
Okay.
Ms. Yanuskavich.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 11-3-1. Your vote will not make a difference.
Okay, thank you. The vote passes. All right, we are adjourned. As I stated earlier, the hanging agenda items just jumped to our next meeting, so they're not actually gone. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, and I will see you next time.
So it's 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And are we calling the executive committee meeting to order now? Or do we need a break?
No, let's just jam on through. It's an hour and a half. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to call us to order at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
I mean, not, is it 8:30? Oh, I don't know Eastern time. Sorry. It's weird.
And as far as roll, Madam Chair, I believe everyone is here from the executive committee, which is yourself, Mr. Watkins, Mr. Hagopian, myself, Mr. Maligan, Mr. Nikela, and Ms. Yanuskavich.
Thank you very much. Okay, who called for this meeting again?
It was myself and Mr. Watkins
And
who
Mr.
sponsored it. Ms. Yanuskavich sponsored a bit later, but the two that were required were myself and Mr. Watkins. The purpose that we both signed on to was to discuss and consider potential ballot access encumbrances for New Mexico and for Kentucky. I did invite representatives from Kentucky, but it was short notice. I do not see any here, but again, it was short notice. I also invited the rest of the ballot access committee and representatives from New Mexico. I do believe we still have, I'm looking through the list here. We still have Rudy Cohn. I don't see Elizabeth Hantz. Is she still here?
I don't see her. I'm reaching out to the Kentucky chair right now.
Okay. So we do have a representative from New Mexico. There are sensitive issues to discuss, and I will move to go into executive session to discuss political strategy regarding confidentiality, noting that if any motions for an encumbrance are made, those will need to be made in public session.
Move to go into executive session, and who all is able to go?
The LNC, the executive committee, and representatives from Kentucky, New Mexico, and if anyone from Kentucky comes, and any members of the Ballot Access Committee. And I do not know if there are any here that are not members of the LNC already, unless Mr. Jacobs is still here.
Okay.
Madam,
I'm still here, but I'm about to leave. So
No, not that Jacobs, the other Jacobs, Andy Jacobs.
Point of information.
Yes.
So are all LNC members, because this is an executive committee meeting, does every member of the LNC have a right to be in executive session here that's not on the executive committee?
Did you ask if they have a right to be here?
Yeah, do they have a right to be in executive session if they're not on the executive committee?
Well, our secretary made a motion that included them. So according to that motion, yes, they do. Does that make sense?
I see. It does.
Yeah, motion language.
Madam Chair.
I see Mr. Redpath has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think also I would think we should consider a bonus for Andy Jacobs and for his work in North Dakota, which he did not make a specific request, but I made a recommendation today on the Ballot Access Committee list.
I don't believe there's enough time notice for us to consider that in this meeting, but we could do it in an email motion immediately following.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Any objections to going into executive session?
Madam Chair, if I could speak somewhat to my motion.
Yes.
And to somewhat answer a question that Mr. Malagon had.
Yep.
It's kind of the standard motion that I made. Parliamentary wise, the only people that have a right to be in executive session with the executive committee is the executive committee and anyone they choose to invite, which means my motion is amendable, but it's only amendable by members of the executive committee. I made the motion with the wording I did, as it's just traditional.
Okay, gotcha. Mr. Malagon?
Well, if this is an amendable motion, I'll just go ahead and say it. I'd like to amend this motion to go into executive session with the LNC excluding the Region 6 representative and the Region 7 representative, and everything else can stay the same. I won't participate in executive sessions anymore. There's too many leaks. There's too many, and we know where they're coming from. There's just so much lying, and it's gotten to the point of absurdity, and I don't want anything to do with that. If they can not be there because they're not voting members of the executive committee anyway, so be it.
All right, Mr. Malagon moved to amend Ms. Harlow's motion to go into executive session with the LNC with the exception of Region 6 and Region 7 representatives.
All right, well, that would mean I'm out, right?
I have a point.
No, not alternates. I just said representatives.
Okay, all right.
Madam Secretary?
That was going to be my point of information if Mr. Malagon cared to answer, or the chair. Would this include the Region 7 alternates? Mr. Redpath would be included no matter what as a member of the Ballot Access Committee.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we can use the names Mark Tunievich and Beth Vest too. Whatever makes the most sense to the secretary to write down.
So does, but I'm sorry for a follow-up, Chair. Will you indulge me?
Certainly.
Is Mr. Dar included? Is Mr. Dar not included as part of this? Meaning Mr. Dar would be invited.
I believe that question was for Mr. Malagon. I assume
Yes.
Mr. Dar is invited into executive session.
Oh, yes. I meant the actual representatives, not their alternates.
Okay, this motion needs a second, or this amendment.
The executive committee is a small committee.
Oh, you're right. It does not need a second. Just kidding. All right, Madam Secretary, when you're ready, take your time. We'll go to a vote on it.
what happened to my executive committee thing? Well, I know everyone who's on the executive committee. Just give me one moment, please. Let me just copy these names down. Mr. Watkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian,
No.
I am going to vote yes. Mr. Malagon?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Nikela?
I vote no.
Ms. Yanuskavich?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 1, 2, 4 in favor, 2 noes. Your vote will not make a difference.
All right, chair's not voting.
I will need to manually move people to the room, which I will proceed to do. Madam Chair, may we stand at ease for 5 minutes for me to take care of
Yes.
this?
Hey, folks, I just wanted to say I'm not going to be participating in this executive session. All right. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right. Do we have everyone back?
Let me check the breakout rooms. Mr. Hirsch is here, so never mind. I'm not going to make my jokes. Poor Mr.
I think
Hirsch.
Mr. Ford is still in there.
Okay, let me try to find the rooms. Where is break? Zoom keeps updating and changing where frickin' everything is at more. I don't know if maybe I think he hit leave meeting because I don't show that room still open, which means everybody left it.
Yeah, he did the opposite of what I told him to do.
Yeah, Zoom keeps adding buttons, and I can't even find the raise hand now.
You need
Can we tell him that I moved to have the next meeting in Rhode Island while he was gone, and it would have passed had it not been for him.
He was the one.
I needed a second. He was the one determined to vote.
Raise hand is now no longer on reactions, it's next to reactions.
That is
all right. We're gonna hear from Mr. Redpath, and then we've got one more thing. Mr. Redpath?
Yes. Well, I see Andy Jacobs on this call, and what are we going to do, Madam Chair, regarding consideration of a motion for a bonus for him?
Oh, we've got to take care of that on the list, just because it wasn't noticed in enough time.
Okay.
Mr. Redpath, if you send me language, I would be more than willing to ask for co-sponsors. You can't do that yourself.
Is the language on the in the ballot access committee email I sent earlier? I think that'll work.
I'll look. I to be honest with you, I'd been busy earlier, so maybe I didn't see it. But if it's not, I can tweak it. I just want a general idea, and I'm more than happy to ask for co-sponsors.
Pretty clear, and of course, it would mean signatures gathered by Mr. Jacobs.
Right. I'll co-sponsor it.
Okay.
Madam Secretary, if you make it, I'll co-sponsor it.
Okay, and then it'll be done. Then we can start it.
Yeah, exactly.
And as to your other request, Mr. Redpath, I'd be more than happy to make a motion on that as well. So we'll get that taken care of on the list. We couldn't do it at this meeting because it's a special meeting and there wasn't enough notice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. There's just one last thing on the agenda.
Actually, one additional thing, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would like to add to the notice that we we also discussed potential pending litigation affecting ballot access that was committed to the executive committee by the LNC.
Thank you.
And now I can move to adjourn. I'm assuming that's what's left.
That is in order.
I'll second.
Thank you so much. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Any objections? Going once, going twice. Hearing none, we are adjourned at 9:40 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Madam
you.
Secretary, I will watch out for your email motion.
Thanks all.
All right.
Have a good night.
It probably will be tomorrow, but I'll get it done.
That's fine. I'll watch it. Thank you.